We're back with another Artist to Art. We've got an awesome guest today. Awesome. I'm so excited from Showfields, Tam. It's just, yeah, this is going to be awesome. How do I know? Because I know. Because I know. And soon you will too. Soon you will too. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Max. Hey!
Hey, how are you?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. I am.
That's the perfect place to be.
Sure, yeah. You're literally catching me on my second day of work after a week-long vacation, so it's a terrible idea. Don't ever go on vacation. You're
Or
gonna pay for
always
it.
go on vacation.
Or don't come back.
What
Yeah.
what was the best part about your vacation?
I mean, we're living in a crazy year, right? And I have two little kids, so they're always here on the other side of my door. It's not like regular times when I'm at work, they're at home, they're at school. So I got to actually connect with them, to spend some quality time because it's just so weird for us to be like sharing space but not sharing time.
Wow. So then you really got to share the time when you were on vacation.
Yes, both time and space.
Wow. And did you go anywhere on this vacation? Or was it like a
I
staycation?
We drove a couple of hours to a nearby beach. I'm based in Miami, so we wanted to stay safely close, but also not stay home. So it was a good compromise.
Safe and like during the pandemic, during all of that. So
Exactly.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about Showfields, just for everybody else out there who might not know, and what you're doing at Showfields?
So Showfields is at the intersection of art and retail. We are the most interesting store in the world. So we handpick brands and artists that are mission driven, that are ahead of the curve. I'm personally the art curator at Showfields, so I specialize on all of the art side, which is what we call show, because show stands for art and fields stands for brands. Basically, Showfields came out of the observation that even before COVID, now it's just much more ironic to say this, but that the physical and the digital world, there was a very big gap between the two. So whenever you go online, you go to Instagram specifically, you can discover hundreds of new artists. Like the same way you and I discovered each other, I, as a curator, I discover so many interesting artists on Instagram. And on the commerce side, you can discover so many cool brands by young founders. And usually the brands that you see online, they're all vegan, they're sustainable, they have an amazing set of values, and they're founded by young people who cannot really afford necessarily to be on the street, on physical life, especially with retail being so expensive. And at the same time, you go to the main streets of any city. You go to Lincoln Road here in Miami, or you go to Soho, or you go to Fifth Avenue, to Rodeo Drive, anywhere that's considered a main city around the world, and they all look exactly the same. There's only 20 brands that can afford those spaces. Um, Public art is usually like either very established artists, or there is not really like a space that is high traffic areas for young artists and young brands. So that's what Showfields does. We have beautiful historical building on Bond and Lafayette in New York City. And we always host 40 brands at the same time that we rotate and we switch out. And we always host and commission artists as well to do site specific work inside our stores. And we also sell artwork also in our stores and recently online as well.
That's so awesome. So could you tell me a little bit about how you got involved or how this came about?
So I've been a curator for a few years, for over 10 years already, and I personally started out in a more traditional curatorial setting, working for a big art collection, the Artist Pension Trust, and then slowly just got more interested in finding more approachable, democratic ways for new audiences to experience art. Um, my last project before Showfields, I was doing a show here in Miami called Raw Pop Up with a very interesting and interdisciplinary group of creatives, in which we would take over abandoned buildings and create very physical, immersive experiences. And the reason why we were interested in doing that was because we also noticed that in, you know, because of there's so much technology and because we're always on our phones so much, why would people go to a museum to experience 2D art or to a gallery when they have their phones? So we thought that the next frontier of art had to be extremely physical and stimulating all of your physical senses so that it really made you want to get out of your house and go experience art, and also so it speaks to a new generation and to a new audience that is not necessarily like within the echo chamber of the art world. So that's how I met Showfields, because they noticed that we were doing this project, and that was very connected to what their mission was, which was to bring interesting things from the digital world to the physical world. And then we started working together. That was in early 2019. And I've never left since then. It's been a
Wow.
wild ride.
How long has Showfields been around? Because you've only been working for the last year or so, year and a half,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they haven't been around longer than that. They're a very, very young company,
Mm-hmm.
very new company.
Right. And it really has a focus on selling work in person as well as online, right? There's that focus of how to bridge those gaps, right? The physical digital
So
side.
yeah, online is a very recent initiative that we started actually due to COVID-19 and the pandemic. We had to close our store in New York. We always wanted to do e-commerce, but all of a sudden it was at the very top of our list. So our team moved very fast. Our CEO and our creative director and everyone at Showfields is very big visionaries, a group of people that really think ahead of the curve. And we decided that it was time to put everything and as much as we could into e-commerce, and really taking advantage of this new live era, which is the same as we're doing now. I don't think I ever did a live in my life before this pandemic, and I
Me
think I've done
neither.
like five. Oh, you've done like a million now.
Well, not before the pandemic
Oh
though.
wow, right. So
I mean,
and
I did them of other people, but I wasn't necessarily the one hosting it
oh, okay.
or in front of the
And
camera.
we're all craving this connection, right? It's not only, to sustain ourselves financially, but, to stay relevant. Um, I think, we came up with this concept where in our platform, we have the first ever click to buy from live videos. So we have a great tech team and we developed this platform. So we started inviting amazing art curators that nobody really talks about supporting art curators. Everybody talks about supporting artists, which they should, but in a situation of a pandemic where you have all of your shows canceled for the majority of the year, I mean, we tried to come up with a solution by which we could sustain our artists, our brands, curators in our ecosystem, and ourselves and our team. So that's what we did, and it's been the most fun, rewarding project ever. I mean, I live in a full digital life, but I'm enjoying every second of it.
Wow. I think that's something that we can all really find a way to take something away from that, is how to live a full life when we have to live in such a quarantine, in such physical isolation from so many people.
Yeah.
And that must be such a difference between you and your work with Raw. The Raw pop-up is like the fully physical immersive, with now it's like fully digital.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Showfields opened its doors a couple weeks ago in New York again, so we're open in New York City, and it's a it's the safest fully physical experience we could create. We have a curation by tax collection with amazing artists like Jacob Fisher, Joey James, Brooke Di Donato. We have a beautiful curation right now going on at Showfields, but I couldn't fly even for the installation. So I'm focusing right now much more, like you say, on the digital part of things, which is totally the opposite of what I thought that I would be focused on. And also, for a long time, I hadn't focused on selling artworks as objects. I was more focused on selling art as an experience, um, or commissioning artists for large scale site specific installations. So for me, going back, it was like a little bit going back to my gallery days or my art collection days, in which you price work, and you figure out like the logistics of it, shipping, collectors, etc. But again, it's completely innovative in this day and age to do it online, the way that we've done it at Showfields.
Right, because you do the online discussion with the curators, and then there's also the part where people buy them while they're on live. They buy that one piece, right?
Yeah. So it's like you and I are speaking right now, and all of a sudden, I create a selection of 10 of your pieces, for example. So, we're discussing your pieces, how they're relevant today. We let, whoever curator we choose, they're free to use our platform for whatever it is that they want to talk about. Social justice, how this pandemic has affected them. It's really about creating that connection. And, as we're talking about your pieces, a little thumbnail appears here at the screen, and people can immediately buy it and check out as they are connecting to the artist and the curator speaking about the piece. So it's like it's the closest you can get to a physical connection, and sometimes even more, because the beauty of this digital space is that it allows you to connect to artists and curators in real time, in which, many times when you walk into a gallery, it's like the opposite. You never have a chance to talk to the artists or the curators or know anything at all about what's going on if you're not, part of the exhibition. So it's meant to be really about connection and not at all about intimidation.
Right. I think that's the really interesting thing, is getting to know the artists, getting to know the curators, getting to know a little bit of that, what's going on with the work, that it really brings it to the forefront, and I appreciate that. So let's check out some of the projects that you shared with me here. Let's see, in the order, in a order, in some order, another order. Is this?
Yeah, that's funny for me to see right now, because that was in 2014. It was my first ever project as an independent curator. I had no idea what I was doing. And somehow that managed to turn out really well.
Wow.
It was in New York City, in Chelsea. I was approached by a beautiful charity organization from Latin America called Techo, which means roof. And they wanted to do an art auction, to support their projects, which were to create homes for homeless people in Latin America. It was their first ever project in New York City. They had worked in Miami before, Miami being the capital of Latin America unofficially. But they wanted to do a show with Latin American artists to support. And my previous job before that was with the Artist Pension Trust, and I was really, a very young learning curator. So with the Artist Pension Trust, I had a chance to work with, some of the most, important emerging to mid-career artists in Latin America. So I just picked up the phone and called all of them to participate in this show. For example, one of the blue pieces that you see hanging from above is part of a wall from Lima, Peru, from an artist called Jose Carlos Martinat. And one piece from that series ended up being acquired by MoMA.
Wow.
So, it was before that time, but these were artists that were already vetted by the organization that I had worked with APT, and by amazing curators for their promise. And all of these artists were so generous and so, willing to participate in this project. It was one night. We sent artworks from everywhere in Latin America. We had a sponsorship from FedEx, who's also, interested in collaborating with this fundraiser. And we installed one night. We de-installed it like the next day. Wow. And we raised $100,000 in one night.
Wow. Just by the sales of the work.
Yes.
Wow.
And ticket sales. Yeah.
And ticket sales. So people were paying to come in, and then there were like appetizers, drinks, and then people could also buy the work.
Yes. I mean, this is a very powerful charity organization in Latin America. They're very well known. The work they do is really important, and they have a really strong base of supporters who look forward to their, to their art sales and charity auctions to acquire work. So it was a combination of a lot of good things happening, and it was a great first experience for me. I was also pregnant that day and had no idea, but I was really, really sick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So all kinds of things were happening right then for you.
Yes. So it was a sign that this is what I should do with my life.
I love it. I love it. Wow. That must be, how did that come to you? How did they find you?
I had a friend that worked for that organization. So she was like, you do art sells well for charity, let's do it. And it was really a great opportunity.
Wow.
Because art and charity for me are best friends. And that was my first opportunity to, to work at it firsthand. And that's exactly what I'm still focusing on now, 6 years later.
Wow. And how do the how do you split up or come to like split up like the arts and the charity? Like do the artists get some of that money and then the charity gets the rest? How does that balance out for the artist as well as the charity?
That's a really good question, because in my experience, most charities, I mean, all due respect to these charities, the work that they do is, is the most noble work in the world. Yet sometimes when they, not coming from the art world, when they want to do an art auction, they don't necessarily think or understand that the artist needs to get a percentage of the piece. And usually artists are more than happy to donate either their works or part of their works. But the first thing I told Techo back in the day, or I tell any charity that I work with these days, is that artists need to get at least minimum 25% of the piece back. But there, that would be my personal minimum. But in terms of what we do at Showfields, artists get 60%, which is even more than a gallery standard.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think that's just really interesting to point out, is like for charities, what that percentage is, because I know a lot of artists watch this, and I think a lot of artists want to find a way for their work to get out into the charity world, to give back and to find a way to work with that. And I think it's important to also know like what that relationship should or could look like, what they should be looking for.
Listen, I'm all about transparency when it comes to art pricing, sales commissions. I'm not, I don't think that the art world, benefits from being, I do think that the art world benefits from being secretive about it, but that's just not my philosophy at all. And it's sometimes very challenging to find what's the exact formula to sustain everybody who's involved. But I don't know, for right now at Showfields, I think we have found that formula that is a win-win situation for everyone involved. We're always, open to tweaking, to listening, to hearing, what our curators have to say, what our artists have to say. And one of the very, I would say, original ideas that we've gotten is that beyond, donating certain percentages for charity, for every person that joins just the conversation, the live, we donate $1 per person to charity. So in that sense, we encourage more people to come, to join, to be part of the conversation. And also in this economy, we all wish we could help more than maybe what the economy would allow us to. So just by showing up, you don't even have to be employed, have a job, be doing well. You can just show up. It's a incredible learning experience, and you're contributing. So that's one of the things that has been working really well for us.
So for any artists out there, go follow Showfields and go follow the all of their different discussions that are live, right? That's the thing. Even by showing up, you give $1, they give $1 to the charity. So let's check out this work. What's happening?
So my favorite thing about my job is going to artist studios. I would say, it's the moment where I feel the most connected and enlightened to the world, because I believe that artists are the true observers of the world. So anything that an artist decides to focus on, to make it their theme of research, their topic of research and work, is what I care about. So doing studio visits is my favorite thing in the world. And for a while, I had a TV show called Fear of Missing Art, FOMA TV, with a friend of mine who's a filmmaker. And we used to go to artist studios and just film our conversations with them, film their work. Beyond that, we used to sneak into backstages of Broadway shows, off-Broadway shows, and try to, talk to the artists, talk to the actresses. So this was at a play at Latea Theater in New York City, which is a Latin American theater in the Lower East Side, where we snuck in. We created our own press passes, and we snuck in.
That's so cool.
The back door, and we started interviewing the actresses. And so, I still feel like I do that even digitally, through Showfields. Like I always want to go into the studio, talk to the artists, sort of like harass them until I get their deepest secrets out of them.
That's so beautiful. I encourage everybody to get some inspiration from this.
Yeah, I'm like, what's your secret? What's your mission? What keeps you up at night? Like I'm very intense with questions.
So what's your secret? What's your mission? What keeps you up at night?
I usually don't get the question back.
I know. That's why this is why we're hanging out here.
Okay. What keeps me up at night? New cultural models. Like I don't know. I feel like the art world should be different. Like it should somehow spill into other industries, spill into other areas, audiences, and beyond. So this is what I think about. I think about, transparency when it comes to hiring artists, working with artists, interdisciplinarism, because I write a lot about this, how the art world sort of punishes artists who are designers, or punishes artists who have a day job, and it's like frowned upon. And I want to do like the opposite of that. I want to work with artists who have the fullest, most diverse set of skills and mindsets, and see how more people, like my dentist, would be interested in art. I think we all have so much to learn from artists who are always ahead of the curve with everything, starting from like areas of real estate to invest in, and political and social justice movements and everything else in between. And at the same time, art like is so beautiful that it allows you to escape reality. So it's just like the language in which I see the world, and I think it's the language where most people would see the world if they realized how it works, or how to see it, or if you lower all the exclusivity and intimidating barriers that there are.
So I guess here's the question now. How could they see it? What is that kind of entry point that you see that would maybe you'd like to put out there in the world right now? Because I know there's a lot that you could. I mean, your article for Medium was awesome, which I suggest everybody go follow and go check out the article in Medium. But what's that kind of entry point for you that you think others could learn, that could be shared?
So I think there's a lot of new doors. That's how I see it. So one door that I've explored, we've opened with different teams that I work with, is the door of sensorial, physical installations that go beyond the visual. That's one door.
Wait, explain this again.
So art is not just meant to be experienced with your eyes. Like most art, or plastic art, or however you want to call it, is visual art. But I don't think it should be just visual art. First of all, that's exclusive to people with disabilities. And also, not everyone learns through their eyes, especially not children. So there's like part of the work that I've commissioned to artists over the years has to explore a different physical sense. So sound, smell, balance, navigation, touch. Well, touch is out of the question now during COVID, but there's a lot of different ways in which we can experience art that is much more democratic in terms of age and ability to understand and learning. Then I think also more relevant in a technology era where there's so much to the imagery. Another door is through charity and cause-based art, which allows people to connect to whatever mission is important for them, and then see how that translates in art, and how art wants the same things we want in terms of, feeding the world, putting a roof over people, social equality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So through whatever cause is important to you, there's going to be an artist and there's going to be a movement that is going to be exploring those same ideas and expressing them through art. Different door is, this conversations, transparent and open conversations with the artists in the museums and going into the studio, because most people see art in a museum, gallery, or fair. So a museum many times is intimidating, and so is a gallery, which is actually a store. A gallery is a store, okay? That sometimes pretends to be a museum. And then a fair is many times commoditized and out of context. So the best way to look at art is really inside the artist studio, because all you need to do is walk in. Usually you understand who that person is, because everything is in such natural context, and you most likely see a lot of work from that same person at once, that you're like, okay, I see what you mean, or I get it. And you don't have to be a curator to understand that. You can see a palette of colors, you can see, a cohesive material, selection. You can see a theme, a topic. You can understand most things about an artist inside their studio. So, I want to keep opening and discovering more doors until, everyone has somewhere to walk through.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I like that. The idea of the door, the idea of like how the artist, the door, the person coming through and opening up the door. I like that imagery. What's going on here?
So that's one of my favorite artworks, because it holds so much meaning to me specifically. When I moved, so I'm originally from Venezuela. That's where I was born and raised. And I left when I was 17 years old, and there was, a full blown dictatorship that is still ongoing, unfortunately. And many people I know had to emigrate. I would say 99% of people I know had to emigrate for different reasons. So this piece is by an artist called Daniel Greenfield Campoverde, who I love, and that's the stamp that you get on your passport when you leave the country from the
Wow.
emigration at the airport.
Like the last thing that you get from the country is this.
Exactly, exactly. And we're a community in exile. I mean, Venezuelans in general.
Uh-huh.
I remember growing up, whenever I had a chance to travel, I would never ever meet, a Venezuelan outside of the country, because in the 80s and 90s, Venezuela was, a much better place to live with more opportunity. And nowadays, anywhere you go, you will find a huge community of exiled, immigrants, getting asylum from every single country in the world. And it's a very, very, very sad situation. And I mean, this is a beautiful bronze cast sculpture that, if I could afford it, I would have it.
Would they make small versions of it?
He actually made prints. He made prints
Oh.
of it. So
So that's one way that it and that seems to like fit with your way of doing it. They may make a big piece that's way out of people's range, but making a print may give more people access.
exactly, exactly. Like, it's hard for artists to have to invest in their own materials and work and process and time. Like, artists are entrepreneurs, like the definition or not. But then, you can't sell at the price point that maybe your audience can afford. So there's always creative ways to make more affordable pieces for people who want to support you but maybe can't afford it. Like, I'm the first one who buys like the museum mugs and plates and stuff, because I can't own a Mauricio Catalan piece, but I want to, so I'll take the mug.
That's cool. I think that's a good that's a good thing to talk about is just like how those different ways maybe like with through mass production that we can all own a little piece of it, part of the idea, or have that in our homes. That piece of meaning I think is so important. How do you go about that with like the artist says the meaning versus you find the meaning versus the curator finds the meaning? How do you balance that in your own self because you're involved in all of these different sides?
That's certainly a debate. I mean, I've met all kinds of artists who don't want anything written about their work, don't want to share what it's about, want people to interpret on their own. I'm personally a sucker for text, but approachable text, not art English, not like, you need a PhD to understand this text, but I read and then I look at the work because I need to understand the context of it. I need to understand the message of the artist. That for me is the most important thing. Um, the winning combination is when it's conceptually very strong and a very well delivered message, and also like aesthetically or detail wise very well produced, right? But um, I think it's important for people to have their own connection to their work as well. You know, it doesn't mean that it changes the meaning of what the artist wanted to imply or wanted to say. Some words are more literal, and some people will make their own connection, and that's part of the beauty of the conversation.
So do you feel like it's good for artists to maybe write a little bit more about their work and to share, like how much to share? Like what would be ideal in your world?
um, I would stop right before it's oversharing, when it's like bombarding people with information that is not crucial. But I am 100% about artists trying to decipher the meaning behind their work and focusing on what's important to them, focusing on what keeps them up at night, what worries them, and creating work that is about that. Um, I mean, artists get a lot of noise, you know. They want, their galleries want artists to produce a smaller work because the collectors are only going to spend this much, and that scale is too big for New York apartments and things like that. But definitely, you know, the more that an artist can stay authentic to themselves while sustaining themselves and having a living is this real versus commercial balance that every person has in the world. Artists are just the best example of it. And that's usually what happens. That's why I love artists so much, because they're usually the best example for many things that other people in society are. But I think we all struggle with this commercial versus integrity balance.
I think that's a really crucial thing to see. Like what I think for me is understanding your idea of this, because I know everybody has their own, and I think that's very interesting for everybody out here to hear that that balancing act as it's happening in real time, and as you see that struggle. I think that that's also really important, is that it can be a struggle back and forth.
It is, and sometimes the balance tips on sides that are not favorable for anyone. I mean, everything is a balance. I mean, working parenthood is a balance, and time management is a balance. But I I think I don't know any single artist that doesn't have the commercial versus integrity balance.
Mm.
Do you have it?
Yes. Yes. I understand it. I understand it. It's an ever changing thing for me. And like what I come from a background in industrial design, so I think it's a slightly different balance for me, and like a background in organization, so it's kind of like I don't know, it's an ever intriguing question for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think specifically artists that are designers, artists that are architects, have, contrary to what the traditional art world might believe, I think you have a huge advantage because you have a certain set of skills and knowledge and abilities that are superpowers when it comes to art. And it's like a natural sister industry in which you can make a living, be really useful, and also use your creativity. And it goes both ways. Like it's a very natural thing to me.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting as like shifting and different people go between industries. As you know, as you've shifted between industries and you've found unique situations because of those uniquenesses inside of yourself. And that's I think just what I find interesting in general is as we all kind of go through these different intriguing situations or think about different things, even art itself, looking at art and considering it can be that intriguing thing that sparks something inside of us and hopefully does, I think. So that thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate
You're a great interviewer, Aaron.
it.
You ask hard questions.
I have fun doing this. I really have fun hanging out and just like having a conversation and sharing what goes on. So like that you went in and behind like the studio and had all of those figured it out, I think was just like really cool for me. I'm just like, oh, I'd love to do stuff like that. I like that whole
Hustling.
getting to see what's deeper, what's beyond. And that's why I've been enjoying these Instagram lives. So I really appreciate you doing this with me and sharing what it is for you.
Thank you for having me.
What's going on here?
Oh, that's Raw Pop-Up. That's the first show we did in Miami where we took over an abandoned post office building from 1914 in downtown Miami, that nobody had stepped foot in there for like 10 years. Such a beautiful building. And we had an open call for local artists to take over the space and with site specific, immersive, beyond the visual interactive art installations. And it was amazing. It was wonderful. I think we worked with around 80 artists. And our cultural financial model was that we used to sell tickets to these shows and then divide the ticket sales between all of the artists.
Wow.
So it wasn't really a show where people sold work, right?
Wow.
We sold the experience, which was, for us, it was the most natural alignment to actual demand for your work, right? So our generation, millennial generation, I don't know, maybe didn't necessarily collect art or spend on objects as much as our parent generation did. It was more about experience, travel. I say was because we live in a totally different era. 2020, I don't know, what the future holds, but there was a lot of talk, in 2017 about how millennials didn't spend on furniture, didn't spend on objects, didn't spend on art. So what did they care about? It was purely experiential. So that's what we gave people, and our goal was to, elevate the city, connect people to the real Miami too, because I feel like this city glorifies the new so much and forgets about the old. And it was, just by being in that building was a direct connection to the history of the city and, a real architectural experience and demand for the experience economy.
Wow. I think that's really interesting how the experience economy and that shifting cultural those shifting cultural trends. So here's my question, because I've that keeps me up sometimes also at night, the shifting cultural trends, actually quite a bit. So I'm fascinated by it.
I'm with you.
Where do you see it going? Like where do you see in the future? What would like your dream be, and where do you kind of like feel it going? Like where's your intuition? Just like these are some things if you were Ray Kurzweil, where would you see it go, kind of thing?
So, intuition is basically data, right? So it's what we see, what we observe, what we read, what we know. So, a combination of things that I've read or think, especially there's a book called The Experience Economy. It's an older book. I think it's from the 80s or 90s. And it says that after the experience economy, the next step is the transcendence economy. And we're already seeing that in terms of wellness, culture, and people looking for experiences that are going to make them transcend as human beings, either chemical or natural or religious, not maybe not religious, but definitely spiritual. And I think that when it comes to art specifically, this connection with a cause, this connection with charity, this connection with something higher than yourself that can improve who we are as a species is what's gonna be relevant. And I think, when it comes to Showfields, we put a lot of our focus on, who are the owners of the companies, what is their mission, what do they care about, how can we consume and shop and spend and support in a way that is much more sustainable, that it's better for the environment, that is better for our bodies, that is better for society. What kind of people need more of our attention and our support right now? How can we hear new voices, that we haven't heard before? I think the movement of art activism and transcendental experience economy is where it's at right now.
I think that's really fascinating as we talk about the transcendent economy. We have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, so, and I have a call in 10 minutes exactly.
Oh, perfect. Well, I think it's really interesting as we talk about the transcendence economy. That's kept me up many nights as I've thought about that. Like, what is that as we go past the, I know I've read a lot of articles about this in terms of we're going past the beer, people are just buying the beer and then they want to learn to make the beer. And then they want to learn to what's behind the beer and to experience themselves. Do they want to what is their experience?
Agriculture, and then how it's the soil and how it's, we're looking for that connection to the source, right?
That's a really interesting thing, I think. And how do you find that? Because, okay, so I'll give a little background. So one of I did a workshop right before this whole thing hit, and it was about giving people, it was about wild crafted sacred spaces, which was bringing people out into nature and then creating a sacred space onto themselves, how to give people space, how to create that space inside of themselves and then create that in their environment. So that just really fascinates me, is how to not only give people that experience, but then how to let people create that inside of themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you feel that the art world can better translate into the world where people are creating that, not only the meaning in the external world, but then allowing others to create that meaning in the internal world? And how does that relate to technology today?
So again, I think about this a lot, and when I was doing a lot of work in the physical world, specifically with interactive art, I felt that was a very direct channel to having people literally get the message that art was sending you in your body and leaving you no choice but to connect. And many interactive artworks are participatory, and they demand your audience reaction and interaction. And it's not like you can just be a bystander and observe. You have to participate. So I think that, when we get out of this pandemic, there's going to be more craving than ever for physical experiences and connections. And artists should be already thinking about how their work is going to change to become more participatory, interactive, and transcendent towards audiences that, have our generation, which has gone through so much confusion, mistrust, loss, um, you know, health wise, economic wise, financial wise, separation from loved ones, like all kinds of confusing traumas, you know. So I think that, you know, I'm always looking at how artists are going to be the first to respond to that and provide the cue for everyone else in society to follow.
How to be like at the forefront of that. And I think that speaks to your where you've placed yourself as kind of curating that curational process. And how do you feel like you would like to further that curational process as we get back into as we move forward into that transcendence space?
I'm only interested in the past as an example, but I don't want to curate artists who are already established or you know, already spoken for in a way. I'm very much more interested in what's next, what's the future, who's the most emerging, most promising, you know, future voice. So yeah, I just want to like understand what our generation is going through. I feel like my job is to understand what our generation is going through as a collective and which art is going to express, understand, and heal that, you know, from all points of view. From all points of view, I mean like intersecting with other industries in society, you know, like, is it hospitals, you know, that we're seeing right now that are in distress? How can artists help shape the experience of hospitals, healing, you know, aesthetics in connection to our experience of the world? Or, you know, whenever there's flying cars or self-driving cars, what's going to be the need for parking lots, and how can we think about that in an artistic way that is also, you know, good and better for society, and that will, you know, make artists the most sought people in society for their creativity when everything else is going to be replaced by technology.
To have the creativity behind the technology, it sounds like
behind leading, driving at least public opinion and demand.
That's really beautiful to consider. What do you suggest for people out there? How can they become involved in that process? I want to give people like kind of like the inspirational aspect, and then maybe some real ways to connect with you, Showfields, before we head out in like 3 minutes. We have like 3 or 4 minutes.
So we always have open calls at Showfields, and we are super democratic in our processes. Like, I honestly don't care if you exhibited at Pace or if it's your first time showing anyone your ideas. We'll read it and we'll give artists a chance to, you know, to show us how the future looks like in your opinion. So, you know, connect with your own voice, with your own self, and what it is that you need to tell the world, and apply to Showfields open calls. We have currently going on a show for Miami, which is all based on sustainability, probably opening at the end of the year. Water rising and sustainability, which is the most Miami need. And then in New York City, we'll probably also, we change our curation every 6 months, and we're planning to open many locations. So in all of these many locations, we're going to be looking for the voices, the artistic voices of each location to tell the stories of their city and how they want the future to be.
Oh, that's beautiful. So we might have just a little bit more time, but what's your vision of the future? Like, what's that? I guess I'm just like, really, you got me interested since you keep talking about the future and the future voices, and I'm just really interested in your voice and because I know that you're oftentimes behind the curators, behind the artists, behind the curators. Like, what's your voice of saying what the future you want for the future?
I really just want artists to be the most important people in society, and that every single important meeting that is going to drive the course of the world needs an artist sitting in that meeting to just like for the sake of connection, because everything is so disconnected from everything, from each other, from it's now uber relevant. And I just think that artists have the power to connect and to make things better, and I'm just trying to do my part in like pushing that into how I see it.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was a very inspiring Tuesday midday.
You're inspiring me. Thank you. And hopefully for everybody else out there, I'd like to thank all of the audience participating and conversing with each other on there and being a part of it. Feel free to comment later, and they should reach out to Showfields and add you on Instagram, right? Right
And
up here.
also, Aaron is gonna do a show at Showfield soon, right?
Yes, soon. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Soon, stay tuned.
Gotta
All
go.
right.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.